Why are we being told what's happening on screen instead of shown it? Why did they keep rewriting the script on set? Charles Xavier was reborn as Ego the Living Planet, and all the mutants got a new superpower: a lack of emotion. Hi, I'm Clive, and that's only a short list of all the things that broke our hearts in Xmen Dark Phoenix. And of course, watch out for spoilers! Xavier's ego. Simon Kinberg, the director of the movie, had an interesting point in mind: to step back from Xavier's image of having pure morals and giving him a new dramatic twist. But the on-screen implementation of that failed. Raven, out of the blue, suggests that Xavier's ego almost killed the team during the mission to space. We only find out from their conversations that Professor X was rewarded multiple times by the president and enjoys being the mighty center of attention. And in the very next scene, we see him getting a reward for a successful space rescue operation that is now pointless. Wouldn't it have made more sense to show this scene at the beginning, before the mission, so that the audience would see the drastic change in Xavier themselves? The character's evolution has to be shown, not spoken about. We thought that "we are not leaving a man behind" was his usual thing to say, as a humble man of great morals. So the scene with the award ceremony was just made as proof of Raven's sentiments, which doesn't really have the same effect as when the audience analyzes the character and assesses their actions by themselves. Apparently his ego prevented him from acknowledging his mistakes with Jean. We all love McAvoy, but this time his character was too calm when Raven died. In fact, they all didn't show much emotion. A major character died, and there's no emotional response from the protagonist at all. It was clear that Xavier didn't believe in his own words. He knew it was his fault, but apparently his ego prevented him from admitting it. Could they have shown him being a bit more flustered by his actions since he is now suddenly so arrogant? It didn't feel real at all. And just as quickly as his ego overwhelmed us, it had surprisingly disappeared by the end of the movie. Dark Phoenix evolution. Despite the fact that we have already seen Jean Grey in previous X-Men movies played by Famke Janssen, Jean is a relatively new character in this movie. She is played by new actress Sophie Turner, and if you haven't read the comics, you might not know much about the story of the Dark Phoenix. So when a new character is introduced, their journey always starts with some major life-changing event. For Jean, it's first her parents' death, then her new extraterrestrial superpowers. But there's absolutely no storyline between these events on screen. Within a matter of seconds, her character evolved from a nice, quiet girl to the vengeful Dark Phoenix. This rush makes it very hard to sympathize with the character, whose normal everyday life and pleasant character we didn't get to see before she turned mad. She was basically brought into the story to be killed. Jean was mainly portrayed as a time bomb that could explode at any moment, but we knew that from the very beginning. It gets boring as the movie goes on because it lacks depth. Though Sophie Turner did well at portraying a wide range of emotions in a short space of time, that did not save the character from being bland. As director Kinberg said, "I wanted the movie to feel grounded, and I wanted it to feel emotional and intimate, and not have too many things that would distract or take away from Jean's evolution, de-evolution, struggle, final decision in this film. I wanted that arc to feel like it was a really emotional experience for the audience." That's very nice of him to say, but maybe he should have focused more on having a meaningful story in the movie. Wow, speaking of the story, on-screen versus comics. It's known that many facts about comic book characters are often changed for the sake of the storyline in a movie, particularly in X-Men, where they never reveal that Nightcrawler is actually Mystique's son with Azazel. The changes to the storylines of comic book characters are made in order to avoid distracting subplots. But it's clear that something is wrong when the character is oversimplified, just like what happened with Lilandra, or as they called her on screen, Yuck. In the original comic book story, Lilandra did indeed belong to an extraterrestrial race, but she was fighting with her brother to save her people and end the Civil War. In an effort to seek help, she came to Earth, met the X-Men, and fell in love with Professor X. But in this case, they made her a villain from the start of the movie. She comes across as very dull in comparison to previous X-Men antagonists. Mutants used to fight against other mutants who had strongly believed that they were protecting themselves, or against narrow-minded people and their racism. While it's okay for Marvel to show the Chitauri just invading the Earth to try and gain power, we are not used to seeing it in X-Men. They just turned her into a pointless alien character with no unique touch. So, the storyline gets incredibly monotonous. Turns out the storylines were constantly rewritten on set. As Jessica Chastain admitted, you could have a conversation and something comes from that, and then the next morning, Simon would show up to work and say, "Hey, I wrote some pages that I think could be interesting for this direction we're going." So, maybe that's the reason it didn't pan out so well. Aside from rewriting the storyline, they should have considered revising the dialogue. It was obviously too repetitive. Perhaps the screenwriters subconsciously highlighted this themselves by having Magneto say it. Eric responded to Xavier saying, "You're always sorry, and there's always a speech." And that's exactly what was happening the whole time. Did you also feel sleepy while watching the film? What do you think about the movie? Let us, in the comments below, know how you feel after watching Dark Phoenix. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Stay awesome!